I walked into that bar by accident, but what I saw shattered 15 years of my life in seconds. My wife, laughing, whispering to him, a folder thick with plans to erase me from her world. Our house, our daughter, my business, signed away behind my back. She thought I wouldn't find out. She thought I wouldn't fight back. She was dead wrong. Now, I'm going to tear apart everything she built, piece by piece. I wasn't supposed to be there. It was a late Friday night, and the bar was crowded, the air thick with smoke and cheap cologne. I had only stopped in for a drink to clear my head, to shake off the week. But fate has a funny way of showing you exactly what you're not supposed to see. I recognized her laugh first. It cut through the noise like a blade, sharp and familiar. My heart stopped. I turned, my eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. Lauren, my wife of 15 years. She was leaning across the table, her hand on someone else's wrist. He was tall, well-dressed, his back to me. I couldn't see his face, but I didn't need to. I watched the way she looked at him, leaning in close, whispering, her eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen in years. I should have walked away. I should have turned around, left, pretended I didn't see. But I didn't. I stepped back into the shadows, my back pressed against the wall, the pounding of my heart drowning out the music. I couldn't hear their words over the noise of the bar, but I didn't need to. Her smile told me everything I needed to know. Her hand on his wrist wasn't casual. It was familiar, intimate. My hands curled into fists, but I forced myself to stay still. I watched them laugh, watched her eyes light up with something I hadn't seen in years. And then I saw it. A folder. Thick and worn, slapped onto the table between them. She opened it, flipping through pages with practiced ease. I saw glimpses, legal terms, highlighted sentences, my name scrawled across the top in bold print. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stepped forward, just enough to catch her words over the noise. He won't see it coming, she whispered, her voice soft and sweet. He never does. Her companion chuckled, leaning back in his chair. When are you filing? Soon, she replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Just need a few more things in place. He's still oblivious. It's almost too easy. My vision blurred at the edges. I watched her fold the folder shut, slipping it back into her bag with a smile. They clinked their glasses, their voices fading into the background as my mind spun. 15 years. 15 years of building a life together, of raising our daughter, of sacrificing everything I had for our family. And she was sitting in a bar, planning to take it all. I stepped back, my heart hammering so loud I thought they might hear it. I turned and left before I did something I couldn't take back. When I got to my car, I sat there in silence, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I stared out the windshield, the rain smearing the lights of the bar into jagged lines. Lauren had made one fatal mistake. She underestimated me. I wasn't going to let her take my daughter. I wasn't going to let her take everything. If she wanted a showdown, I was ready to face her. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the living room, the clock ticking away the hours as the weight of it all sank in. Lauren wasn't just planning to leave. She was plotting to take everything, our house, our daughter, my business. And she was laughing about it, clinking glasses with someone else while I sat at home, oblivious. But I wasn't oblivious anymore. At 3 a.m., I grabbed my laptop and started digging. I knew her passwords, of course, I did. 15 years of public life together teaches you things. Little habits, birth dates, favorite songs. I typed them in, one by one, until her email flashed on the screen. I expected to find a few messages. Maybe a hidden contact or two. What I found was a digital graveyard of lies. Folder after folder, organized and time-stamped. Legal documents, custody plans, wire transfers I'd never seen before. She was funneling money out of our accounts, small amounts at first, barely noticeable. But it added up. Thousands of dollars rerouted to a name I didn't recognize, Greenfield Holdings. I clicked through more files, my hands shaking. She had been planning this for years. While I was building our business, growing our investments, she was siphoning off pieces of it for herself. The worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the photos. They were buried deep, hidden in a folder marked receipts. I clicked on the first one, and my breath left my lungs. Lauren, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, smiling. Beside her was a man I had only seen once from behind in that bar. The one she had been laughing with, planning with. My blood went cold. I clicked to the next one, then the next. House visits, coffee shops, business meetings that were anything but professional. All while I was at work, pulling double shifts to make sure our daughter had everything she needed. I sat back, the laptop still glowing on my knees. 15 years. 15 years of public life. And it was all a lie. I could have confronted her right then. Marched up the stairs, ripped the covers off, and watched her face fall apart as I threw the evidence in her lap. But that wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel it. To watch everything she built come crashing down, just like she planned for me. So, I didn't say a word. I backed out of the folders, erased my digital footprints, and closed the laptop. My mind was already spinning, quietly forming a strategy. She wanted a perfect life without me? Fine. I'd make sure she never got it. The days that followed felt like walking through quicksand. Every step heavier than the last, every smile forced and hollow. I watched her closer than I ever had before, studying every movement, every whisper, every glance at her phone. She didn't know I knew. And that was my greatest advantage. Lauren moved like she always did, graceful, calculated, never a step out of place. She kissed me on the cheek before work, sent me texts about dinner plans, and even asked if I could pick up Lily from school on Fridays. It was all so perfectly normal, so perfectly fake. I kept playing my part, smiling, nodding, keeping my suspicions buried so deep she couldn't see them. But inside, I was a storm waiting to break. And then I saw it, the first real crack. It came one afternoon, right after I picked up Lily from school. She was sitting in the back seat, her hands clutching her backpack, I staring out the window. She didn't say a word the whole drive home. Usually, she'd chatter nonstop stories about her friends, her teachers, her dreams of becoming a pilot one day. But that day, she was silent. Too silent. When we got home, I parked the car and turned around to look at her. "You okay, kiddo?" She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed glued to the window, her little fingers fidgeting with the zipper on her bag. I leaned back, trying to catch her gaze. "Hey, Lily, you all right?" Her head turned slowly, her eyes locking with mine. There was something there, something heavy, something dark that didn't belong on a 10-year-old's face. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daddy, do you still love us?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the air leave my lungs, my mind scrambling for words that wouldn't come. "What? Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" Her eyes flickered back to the window. Mommy said you don't want to be with us anymore. That you want to leave." I swallowed hard, my hands tightening around the steering wheel. I stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, watching as she shrank into her seat, her tiny shoulders folding in. "Mommy said that?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Lily nodded. "She said you're too busy, that you want to live somewhere else." Rage flared up in my chest, hot and suffocating, but I pushed it back down. I forced a smile, reaching back to brush a strand of hair from her face. "That's not true, kiddo. Don't you ever think that?" Her eyes met mine, wide and glassy. "Promise." "I promise," I whispered, feeling the words burn my throat. "I'm not going anywhere." When we walked inside, Lauren was there, standing in the kitchen, stirring a pot of something that smelled like burnt promises. She looked up, flashing me that perfect smile. "Hey, how is school?" she asked Lily, her voice sweet as honey. Lily glanced at me, then back at her mother. "Fine," she murmured, slipping off her shoes and heading to her room. Lauren turned back to the stove, humming softly. I watched her for a moment, my hands still clenched at my sides. She had always been good with words. Always knew how to twist them just right to get what she wanted. But using them on Lily? That was a line I never thought she'd cross. But she had. And I was going to make sure she faced the consequences. I knew I had to move quickly. Lauren wasn't just planning to take Lily. She was plotting to erase me entirely. The house, the money, my own daughter, it was all laid out in black and white, her signature stamped proudly at the bottom of every page. But she made one mistake. She thought I wouldn't fight back. The next morning, I was sitting across from the best family lawyer in the state. Her office was sleek, polished, walls lined with awards and certificates that gleamed under the soft lights. She leaned back in her chair, fingers laced together as she listened to everything I had to say. When I finished, she raised an eyebrow. "So, she's been funneling money into separate accounts, purchased property out of state, and filed for custody without your knowledge?" I nodded, all behind my back. "I have the documents." Her eyes sparkled with something I hadn't expected, determination. "You understand this is serious. If she's already filed and you're unaware, she could move fast." I reached into my bag, pulling out the photos I had taken of the files, the bank accounts, the mortgage agreements. I laid them on her desk, one by one. "I want you to destroy her case. I don't just want to fight it, I want to bury it." The lawyer flipped through the photos, nodding slowly. I can do that, but we need more. Like what? I asked, leaning forward. Witnesses. Proof that she's been manipulating your daughter. Evidence that she's been planning this for months. My jaw tightened. I thought of Lily, her wide eyes staring back at me from the back seat of the car. Mommy says you don't want to be with us anymore. My fists clenched at the memory. I can get you that. Good, she replied, sliding the photos back toward me. I'll prepare the counterclaim. You'll want to start watching her movements. If she makes a mistake, we need to be ready to catch it. I stood up, shaking her hand firmly. I want to file immediately. Her smile was sharp, cutting. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. By the time I walked out of her office, the clouds had rolled in, casting the city in a dull, gray haze. I didn't mind. It suited my mood just fine. Lauren thought she had it all wrapped up. She thought I'd roll over, sign the papers, and watch my life disappear. But she didn't know me. Not anymore. I spent the next week quietly building my case. I dug through old bank statements, cross-referencing with the accounts she had set up under Greenfield Holdings. I recorded phone calls, documented every time she left the house, every unexplained meeting, every hour she spent away from Lily. And then, I found it. I was going through her email late one night, combing through archived folders when I saw it, a set of messages marked confidential. They were between her and a law firm I'd never heard of, discussing terms of custody, relocation plans, and asset transfers. I clicked through them, each message more damning than the last. She had been planning to file for sole custody as soon as the paperwork was finished. She had lawyers ready, accounts prepared, and friends lined up to testify on her behalf. I printed everything. By the time I was done, there were stacks of paper spread out across my office floor, each one another nail in the coffin of her plan. When I finally leaned back in my chair, the sun was creeping up over the horizon, spilling pale light across the room. I watched it filter through the blinds, the warmth creeping in, and I smiled for the first time in days. Lauren had been building a case against me for months. Years, maybe. But I had something she didn't. The truth. And I was going to use it to tear her world apart. The days blurred together, each one more calculated than the last. I played my part, nodding, smiling, pretending I hadn't uncovered her grand plan. Lauren moved through the house like she always did, her steps light, her smile sharp and practiced. But I saw it now. The way she glanced over her shoulder when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she locked her office door just a little tighter. She was getting ready. And so was I. I spent my days gathering evidence, every scrap of information she tried to hide. I combed through her financials, tracking the accounts she had funneled money into, tracing every wire transfer to that shell company, Greenfield Holdings. I didn't stop there. I followed her digital footprints, logging every email, every encrypted message, every time she left the house and said she was going to a client meeting. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, printouts, voice recordings. The lawyer had set me up with a digital log, something she called a custody journal. Every manipulation, every whispered word to Lily, every time Lauren tried to twist her mind against me, I wrote it down. I was putting together a solid case, piece by piece. But it wasn't until the parent-teacher conference that I realized just how deep her manipulation went. It was a Thursday afternoon. I showed up 10 minutes early, like I always did. Lily was already inside, talking to her friends, her smile bright and wide. I watched from the hallway, my heart aching with how much she looked like her mother. Same eyes, same laugh, innocent, untouched by the lies swirling around her. Lauren showed up 5 minutes late, heels clicking against the linoleum, her smile plastered on as she greeted the teachers. I waved, keeping my distance, and she barely acknowledged me. We sat down across from her teacher, Mrs. Hargrove, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She shuffled through some papers, nodding as she scanned the notes. Lily's doing well. Great scores in reading and math. I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. That's my girl. Mrs. Hargrove hesitated, her eyes flickering to Lauren before coming back to me. There is one concern. Lauren straightened, her expression turning cold. What concern? Mrs. Hargrove cleared her throat. Lily's been saying some things in class. Things that have us a little worried. My heart thudded against my ribs. What kind of things? Mrs. Hargrove hesitated, her gaze moving to Lauren again. She's been telling her friends that you're leaving, that you don't want to live with them anymore. The words hung in the air like a knife, sharp and glinting. My jaw clenched. I didn't dare look at Lauren. And where would she get that idea? I asked, my voice measured. Mrs. Hargrove hesitated. She says her mother told her. The room fell silent. Lauren's hands tightened around her purse, her knuckles turning white. That's absurd, she snapped, her voice too loud for the quiet room. I would never say that. But Mrs. Hargrove didn't flinch. Her eyes were sharp, unyielding. I'm just telling you what I heard. I forced a smile, nodding slowly. Thank you for letting me know. Lauren's eyes cut to mine, daggers hidden behind her perfect smile. We should go, she said quickly, standing up and tugging her purse over her shoulder. We're late for an appointment. I followed her out of the classroom, my hands stuffed in my pockets to keep them from shaking. We walked in silence until we reached the parking lot, and that's when I saw it. A man, standing by Lauren's car, leaning against the hood with his arms crossed. He was tall, well-dressed, his eyes fixed on us as we approached. Lauren's steps quickened, her heels clicking against the pavement. She didn't look back. I stopped in my tracks, watching as she marched up to him, her voice low and hurried. He nodded, glancing in my direction before opening the passenger door for her. She slipped inside without a word. The engine started, and the car rolled away, disappearing around the corner without so much as a glance back. I stood there for a long time, my hands still stuffed in my pockets, my mind racing. She wasn't just planning to take Lily. She was planning to replace me. And I was done playing nice. I watched them drive away, the taillights flickering red before disappearing around the bend. My hands were still stuffed in my pockets, fingers curled into fists. I knew now, this wasn't just about leaving. It was about erasing me completely. But she had no idea what I had prepared. I didn't go home right away. I took a drive instead, winding through the back roads of town, letting the silence soak into my bones. Lauren thought she had everything locked up, papers signed, lawyers bought, stories spun. But she had underestimated me. When I finally pulled into the driveway, it was already dark. The house was still, empty. I knew she wouldn't be back for hours, not with him. That was fine. I needed the space. I slipped into my office, closing the door behind me. The lamp flickered on, casting shadows across the stacks of papers piled on my desk. Evidence, documentation, every lie, every whisper she had told. It was all there, building up like a tower of truth. I opened my laptop, pulling up the cloud storage I had synced with her phone weeks ago. I scrolled through the logs, texts, call history, encrypted messages. She thought she had covered her tracks. But she was wrong. My hands moved quickly, organizing files, compiling evidence, building the perfect case. Bank transfers, hidden accounts, secret meetings, every single betrayal cataloged and timestamped. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted to reach her where it stings the most. I opened the folder marked Greenfield Holdings, the name that kept popping up in every transaction. I dove deeper, cross-referencing the payments, finding names, addresses. And then I saw it. A list of properties, multiple locations spread across the state, each one listed under her name and her partner's. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't just leaving. She was building a new life, one that didn't include me or Lily. I printed everything. It took nearly half an hour for the documents to finish, the printer humming softly as page after page spilled out, black ink bleeding across white sheets. When I was done, I stacked them neatly, slipping them into a thick manila envelope. That's when I heard the door. I froze, my hands still on the printer. Keys jingled in the lock, and the door swung open, footsteps padding softly across the floor. I shoved the envelope into the bottom drawer, locking it tight. Lauren appeared in the doorway, her hair slightly out of place, her smile forced. Hey, you're home early. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Yeah, just finishing up some work. She walked in, her heels clicking against the hardwood. Did you eat? I'm fine, I replied, my eyes never leaving hers. She paused in the doorway, studying me. For a second, I thought she was going to say something, confess, maybe. But she just smiled, her eyes glassy and distant. I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late. I watched her disappear down the hallway, the sound of her footsteps fading into the silence. I didn't move. Not for a long time. When I finally stood, I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. It was heavy. Heavy with proof. Heavy with every secret she had tried to hide. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest. Tomorrow, I would take it to my lawyer. Tomorrow, I would burn her perfect plan to the ground. Lauren had been building a life without me, but I was going to guarantee she faced the full truth. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on my desk, thick and heavy, its contents practically humming with the weight of what they held. By dawn, I was dressed and ready. I locked the door behind me, the envelope tucked under my arm, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Her name was Amanda Gray, a pit bull in heels. She had a reputation for tearing through opponents in court and leaving them in pieces. It was why I chose her. She didn't just win. She destroyed. I walked into her office, the polished floors gleaming under fluorescent lights. She was waiting for me, her hands folded neatly on her desk, her eyes sharp and focused. "You said you had something important?" I handed her the envelope, not saying a word. She opened it, her eyes scanning the documents one by one. Bank transfers, property deeds, email exchanges, each one more damning than the last. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She just kept reading. Finally, she set the papers down and looked up at me. "She's been planning this for a long time." I nodded. "I want to take everything back." Her lips curled into a smile. "Good. Because you can." Amanda leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to freeze those accounts before she can touch them. I'll file for emergency custody based on financial fraud and parental alienation. She won't see it coming." I felt a surge of adrenaline flood my veins. "How long will it take?" 3 days, she replied, her smile widening. "I'll have a judge sign off on it by Friday." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Let's do it." She started typing immediately, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I watched her work, the weight on my shoulders finally beginning to lift. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was back in control. I left her office just after noon. The sun was bright, the air sharp and clean. I climbed into my car and just sat there for a minute, staring at the sky. It was the calm before the storm. That night, I played my part. Lauren came home late, her smile plastered on, her eyes glassy and distant. "Work ran late," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. "You know how it is." I nodded, hiding the satisfaction that burned just beneath the surface. "Yeah, I know." She poured herself a glass of wine, oblivious to the fact that her empire was crumbling right under her feet. We ate dinner in silence, Lily talking about her school project while Lauren smiled and nodded, her mind somewhere else. But I saw it now. Every whisper, every sidelong glance. It was all a performance, a perfectly crafted act designed to keep me in the dark. But the lights had come on, and the show was almost over. The next morning, I got the call. Amanda's voice crackled through the line. "It's done. Accounts frozen, emergency custody filed. She'll get the notice today." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "And the properties? They're locked too. She won't be able to touch them." I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Thank you." When I got home, the house was empty. Lauren's car was gone. I sat in the living room, hands folded, waiting. Hours ticked by, the sunlight stretching across the carpet, inch by inch. When she finally came through the door, I was ready. She stepped inside, keys jangling in her hand, a stack of papers under her arm. Her eyes locked on mine, sharp and cold. "What did you do?" I didn't move. I reclaimed what belonged to me. Her hands clenched around the papers, her jaw tightening. "You had no right." I stood up, crossing the room slowly, my eyes never leaving hers. "You tried to take my daughter. You tried to take everything. But I'm still here." Her face paled, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for an escape. "You think this is over?" she hissed, her voice trembling. I leaned in close, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Oh, it's just beginning." Her hand shot out, slapping the papers against my chest. I caught them before they hit the floor, glancing down at the header. "Custody appeal." I smirked, tucking the papers under my arm. "You can try, but you'll lose." I watched her eyes flicker with something dark, fear, maybe, or desperation. Either way, I didn't care. She turned on her heel, storming out of the house, the door slamming shut behind her. I stood there for a long time, the papers still clenched in my hands. She was going to fight. Of course, she was. But I had seen her cards. I knew her game, and I wasn't planning to lose. I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. Lauren was a master of manipulation. She always had been. That custody appeal she slapped against my chest wasn't just a desperate move. It was a declaration of war. But she didn't know I was prepared. The day after she stormed out, I got a call from Amanda. "You're going to want to come to the office," she said, her voice clipped and businesslike. "We just got the discovery documents from her legal team." I didn't waste time. I was there within the hour, Amanda waiting for me with a thick folder already open on her desk. She barely glanced up when I walked in. "You're going to want to see this." I stepped forward, my eyes scanning the documents she had laid out. The first few pages were standard, financial disclosures, asset lists, basic custody arguments. I felt my fist clench as I saw the claims she was making. Emotionally unavailable, work-focused, unfit father. It was all lies. But it was the last few pages that stole my breath. Amanda tapped her pen against the paper, her eyes glimmering with something dangerous. Look familiar? I leaned in, reading the list of properties, all registered under Greenfield Holdings. The same shell company that had been siphoning money from our accounts. My heart hammered against my ribs. How did they get this? Amanda smirked, crossing her arms. They didn't. You did. I blinked. Come again. You gave me everything I needed to dig deeper. Once we froze the accounts, I started poking around. Turns out, Greenfield Holdings isn't just hers. She leaned back, tossing a flash drive onto the desk. It's his too. I stared at her, unblinking. Whose? Her lawyer. Thomas Gray. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Her lawyer, the same man who had been fighting tooth and nail to rip Lily from my life, was listed as a managing partner of the shell company Lauren had been funneling money into for years. Amanda leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. They've been laundering money. Not just siphoning from your accounts, but running it through fake property deals. Offshore accounts. You name it. My hand shook as I picked up the flash drive. This is enough? More than enough, she replied, her grin sharp as a blade. If you want to bury them, this is your shovel. I sat back, the weight of it all crashing down. It wasn't just Lauren. It was bigger. Much bigger. They had been using my business, my name, my family as cover for their own empire of lies. And now it was time to take it all back. We filed the next morning. Fraud. Embezzlement. Collusion. The paperwork was thick and unyielding, filled with every detail Amanda had uncovered. I signed my name at the bottom of every page, feeling the power shift back into my hands with each stroke of the pen. Lauren got served at her office. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it. Word traveled fast in a small town. People whispered about the cops, the way she turned pale as a ghost when they walked in, the way she clutched her purse like it could save her. It couldn't. Thomas Gray was next. Amanda didn't waste time. She had him locked down with enough evidence to pull his license before he could even mount a defense. Greenfield Holdings crumbled under the pressure of federal investigation, their assets seized, their accounts frozen. Lauren tried to call me that night. I watched the phone vibrate across the counter, her name flashing on the screen like a beacon of desperation. I didn't answer. Instead, I poured myself a drink, leaned back in my chair, and watched the sun dip below the horizon. Her plans were falling apart, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. The first crack appeared just days after the papers were served. I heard it from Amanda. Lauren had tried to withdraw money from one of the frozen accounts, the one tied to Greenfield Holdings. The bank had flagged it immediately. She must have realized then that her empire wasn't just crumbling, it was buried. I expected her to come storming back home, yelling and screaming about betrayal and injustice. But she didn't. Lauren always had a flair for the dramatic, but when things got serious, she moved in silence. It's what made her so dangerous. I kept my eyes open. Her car never showed up in the driveway, her messages grew more sporadic, and when she did call, her voice was brittle, desperate. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know when. Until I did. It was a Tuesday. Lily had just come home from school, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her smile brighter than the sun. I helped her with her homework, made her dinner, tucked her in. Everything was fine. Perfect. Even. Until the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a man in a black suit standing on my porch. His expression was flat, professional. Mr. Warren? I nodded. That's me. He handed me an envelope, sealed and stamped with the state emblem. You've been served. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at the envelope, my fingers going numb as I cracked it open. Inside were pages of legal text, lined with her lawyer's name at the bottom. She was filing an emergency appeal for full custody of Lily, claiming I was unfit, emotionally unstable, financially irresponsible. Lies, all of it. But well-crafted lies. The kind that can ruin a person if left unchecked. I thanked the man, more out of reflex than anything else, and shut the door. My mind spun, anger boiling just beneath the surface. She was coming for everything. The business wasn't enough. Greenfield Holdings wasn't enough. She wanted Lily too. I picked up the phone, dialing Amanda's number without hesitation. She answered on the second ring. I've been expecting your call. You heard? I asked, my voice tight. Of course I did. She's desperate, Amanda replied, her tone sharp and unyielding. I've already filed the counter motion. You're going to need to be ready for this. I'm ready, I said, my jaw clenched. I'm not losing my daughter. Amanda's voice softened, just slightly. I know you won't. But she's going to fight dirty. Be prepared. I hung up, my hand shaking as I set the phone down. I walked into Lily's room, watching her sleep, her little chest rising and falling with each breath. My heart ached. Everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, was for her. I wasn't going to let Lauren take that away. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school and drove straight to the courthouse. Amanda was waiting for me, her heels clicking against the marble floors as we walked into the courtroom. Lauren was already there, her lawyer at her side. She didn't look at me, just kept her eyes forward, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The judge entered, his robe swaying as he sat down, his eyes heavy with the weight of 1,000 cases before ours. The hearing began. Lauren's lawyer stood first, his voice smooth and practiced. He laid it out in neat little bullet points. My long hours, my late nights, my supposed neglect. He painted me as a workaholic who barely knew his own daughter. It was a masterclass in deception, but I knew the truth. When it was Amanda's turn, she stood with the confidence of someone who had already won. She laid out every scrap of evidence we had gathered. The hidden accounts, the shell companies, the fraud, the bribery. Greenfield Holdings was paraded out like a carcass, its secrets flayed open for the judge to see. Lauren sat there, unmoving. But I saw her hands, clenched tight in her lap, her knuckles white. She was losing. For the first time, she had no control. When Amanda finished, the judge leaned forward, his eyes sharp. Mrs. Warren, do you have anything to say? Lauren's jaw tightened, her eyes flickering toward me for just a moment. And then she spoke. He took everything from me, she whispered, her voice cracking. Everything. The judge's gaze didn't waver. From where I'm sitting, it looks like you took plenty for yourself. I watched her flinch, the words striking harder than any punch. The gavel came down, sharp and decisive. Custody remained with me. Her emergency appeal was denied. Lauren stood, her shoulders hunched, her face pale. She walked out of that courtroom without looking back. And I knew then, this wasn't over. Not yet. The courtroom victory was only the beginning. I knew that. Lauren was a cornered animal now, wounded, desperate, unpredictable. She'd lost her emergency appeal, her shell company was exposed, and her accounts were frozen. But she wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't have to wait long to find out just how far she was willing to go. It was 3 days after the hearing. I had just dropped Lily off at school and was pulling back into the driveway when I saw her car. Parked right in front of the house, engine idling, Lauren in the driver's seat. She didn't get out. She just sat there, staring straight ahead, her fingers drumming on the steering wheel. I stepped out of the car, shutting the door quietly. You're not supposed to be here, I called out, keeping my distance. She didn't move, didn't even blink. I walked up slowly, my eyes locked on hers through the windshield. Finally, she reached over and killed the engine. The silence hit like a wave, heavy and suffocating. The door opened, and she stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement. She was dressed sharp, like she had just come from a business meeting. But there was something different in her eyes. Something I couldn't quite place. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice steady but strained. I crossed my arms, staying put. We've said everything there is to say. She shook her head. Not everything. I watched her for a moment, my hands still clenched at my sides. Finally, I nodded toward the porch. Talk. We walked up the steps, the wood creaking under our weight. I leaned against the railing, keeping the door at my back. She stayed standing, her hands folded neatly in front of her. I know you think you've won, she began, her voice low. But you haven't. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because it seems like you're the one who lost everything. Her eyes flashed with something sharp and dangerous. You always were too arrogant. You think this is over? You think I don't have anything left? I watched her, unblinking. I know you don't. She laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that scraped against my nerves. You have no idea how deep this goes. How far I'm willing to go. I straightened, my fists tightening. Are you threatening me? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Not you. She paused, letting the silence stretch between us. Her. The world seemed to stop. I stepped forward, my heart pounding against my ribs. What did you just say? Lauren tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. You took everything from me. My life, my money, my reputation. So maybe it's time I take something from you. The air went cold. My vision tunneled, narrowing down to just her, standing there, smiling like she had already won. If you come near her, I whispered, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. I swear I will destroy what little you have left. Her smile didn't waver. You can try. I took another step forward, the porch groaning under my weight. You come near my daughter, and I will make sure you never see daylight again. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. You think you know me, but you don't know how far I'm willing to go. I held her gaze, unflinching. Then you better hope I don't find out. We stared at each other, the silence heavy and suffocating. Finally, she straightened, smoothing her dress with perfectly manicured hands. See you in court, she said softly, turning on her heel and walking back to her car. I stood there, watching her drive away, my hands shaking with adrenaline. She thought she still had power. She thought she could still win. I had an unexpected turn waiting for her. And this time, I was ready. The days leading up to the next court hearing were a blur of meetings and strategy sessions. Amanda had everything lined up, the evidence, the witnesses, the financial records. We weren't just going to fight. I wanted to bring her plans crashing down. Lauren had crossed the line. Threatening me was one thing. Threatening my daughter? That was a declaration of war. And I wasn't playing defense anymore. The courtroom was packed when I walked in. Reporters whispered from the back rows. Cameras flashed, and lawyers shuffled their papers, readying for battle. Lauren was already there, seated next to her lawyer, Thomas Gray. The man I now knew was more than just her legal representation. He was her partner in crime. I took my seat, feeling the weight of it settle into my bones. I glanced across the aisle, catching Lauren's eye. She didn't look away. Her gaze was sharp, unyielding. I returned the stare, unblinking. If she wanted a fight, I was ready to give her one. The judge entered. The room hushed to silence, and the proceedings began. Thomas Gray stood first, launching into a speech about my emotional instability, my obsessive behavior, and my inability to provide a stable home environment. He had his lines rehearsed well, spinning the story like he was reading from a script. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just watched. When he finished, Amanda stood, her heels clicking against the tile floor with confidence. She walked up to the bench, her hands folded calmly in front of her. Your Honor, I would like to present evidence contradicting Mr. Gray's statements. She slid a thick binder across the table. The judge flipped it open, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the contents. Bank transfers, property deeds, communication logs between Lauren and Thomas Gray, detailing transactions and shell companies, all tied to Greenfield Holdings. The courtroom shifted, whispers rising from the gallery. I saw Lauren's eyes widen just a fraction. Thomas Gray leaned over, whispering furiously in her ear. But Amanda wasn't done. She stepped back to the middle of the courtroom, her eyes sharp and unyielding. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Warren, along with her legal representation, engaged in fraudulent activity, using my client's business and personal accounts to fund illegal ventures under the guise of Greenfield Holdings. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Lauren's face turned pale, her hands clenched tight in her lap. I didn't take my eyes off her. Not for a second. Amanda turned back to the judge. Furthermore, we have substantial proof of parental alienation, financial manipulation, and attempts to defraud Mr. Warren of his legal rights to custody. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. Your Honor, we are requesting full custody of the child, financial restitution, and a full investigation into Mrs. Warren's business dealings. The judge leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Lauren. Mrs. Warren, he began, his voice heavy with authority, do you have a response to these claims? Lauren stood up, her hands shaking. This is all fabricated. He's lying. Amanda stepped forward, sliding another document across the table. Your Honor, these are the original bank statements, signed and authorized by Mrs. Warren. They match the deposits found in the Greenfield Holdings account. The judge picked up the papers, his eyes scanning the lines. Lauren's breathing quickened. I saw her hands twitch, her eyes darting toward the exit. She was unraveling right there in front of everyone. The gavel came down, sharp and final. Until further investigation, full custody of the child is awarded to Mr. Warren. All assets linked to Greenfield Holdings are to be frozen. Court is adjourned. The whispers turned to murmurs, people standing, papers rustling. I stayed seated, my eyes still locked on her. Lauren looked at me, her eyes glassy with desperation. She stepped forward, just a bit, her hands reaching out. You can't do this, she whispered, her voice cracking. I stood up, my eyes never leaving hers. I didn't do this, Lauren. You did. Her mouth opened, words dying on her tongue. I watched her, unflinching, until the guard stepped forward, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. She was led away, her head bowed, her heels clicking against the floor like the echo of a distant memory. I stayed until the room was empty, the papers still scattered across the judge's desk. Amanda walked up beside me, her voice soft. "You did it." I nodded slowly. "No." She did. The days that followed were a whirlwind of signatures, court filings, and late-night meetings with Amanda. Lauren's accounts were frozen. Greenfield Holdings was under federal investigation, and Thomas Gray was facing disbarment. Everything she built, every lie she told, was crumbling around her. I thought I would feel relief, maybe even happiness. But what I felt was something colder, sharper. A kind of satisfaction that burned slow and steady. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, unfolding piece by piece, until there was nothing left. I stood outside the house that evening, the sun setting low behind the trees. Lily was with my sister for the night. I didn't want her to see this. Not yet. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, the air stale and heavy with memories. Her things were still here. The pictures on the walls, the clothes in the closet, the stacks of papers she never bothered to organize. It was like walking through a museum of lies. 15 years of public life, of perfectly framed moments, all built on a foundation of deceit. I walked through the living room, pausing at the mantel. There was a framed photo of the three of us, me, Lauren, and Lily, at the beach. Lauren's smile was perfect, bright and wide. I stared at it for a long time before finally taking it off the shelf and tossing it onto the floor. The glass shattered, the picture folding in on itself. One by one, I took the rest down. Pictures of our wedding, birthdays, anniversaries, all of it. Each one landed in the middle of the living room in a growing pile of shattered glass and broken frames. When I was done, I grabbed a box of matches from the kitchen drawer, the familiar snap of the wood scraping against the matchbook feeling heavier than it should. I struck the match, the tiny flame flickering to life, and held it above the pile. For a moment, I hesitated, the flame dancing just inches from the edge of a photo of Lily blowing out candles on her 5th birthday. I took a breath, closed my eyes, and let it drop. The fire caught fast, spreading from picture to picture, licking up the sides of the frames, curling the paper into blackened flakes. Smoke curled toward the ceiling, thick and heavy, but I didn't move. I just stood there, watching it burn. It wasn't just photos. It was memories. The lies she had spun, the trust she had shattered. Every flicker of the flame felt like a piece of her grip on me disappearing, disintegrating into ash. When the fire began to spread, I finally stepped back, grabbed the fire extinguisher from the hallway closet, and doused the flames before they could creep to the walls. The smoke was thick, suffocating, but I stayed until the last embers died out. When it was done, the living room was covered in ash, the floor dusted with fragments of glass and charred memories. I stood there, breathing in the smoky air, feeling lighter than I had in years. I grabbed the broom from the closet, sweeping up the remains of our life together, one piece at a time. By the time I was done, the living room was bare, the walls stripped clean. She was gone. For good. And I wasn't done yet. The news broke 3 days after the fire. Greenfield Holdings had collapsed. Its assets were frozen, its executives under investigation, and Thomas Gray was facing criminal charges. I read the headlines with my morning coffee, each article another nail in the coffin of Lauren's empire. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. The first sign came in the form of a letter. It was slipped under my door in the early hours of the morning, the paper thin and crumpled like it had been handled too many times. My name was scrawled across the front in her handwriting. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. For a moment, I considered throwing it away. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it, the paper unfolding with a soft crackle. "You think you've won. But this isn't over. You're not keeping her. I won't let you." There was no signature. Just those words, ink-smudged and rushed. My jaw tightened, my fingers curling around the edges of the paper. She was planning something. I could feel it. Amanda confirmed it the next morning. She called me just as I was dropping Lily off at school. "You're going to want to hear this," she said, her voice tense. "Lauren's petitioning for emergency custody. Again." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. On what grounds? Parental neglect, unsafe living conditions, financial instability, you name it. She's throwing it out there. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "And how strong is her case?" Amanda chuckled, low and sharp. "It's weaker than wet paper. But she's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things." I knew she was right. but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Lauren didn't act without a plan. She moved quietly, patiently, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The knock came 2 nights later. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through the last of the court papers when I heard it, loud, insistent. I opened the door to find 2 police officers standing on my porch, their expression stern. "Mr. Warren?" one of them asked, his voice steady and professional. "That's me," I replied, keeping my tone even. He handed me a folded piece of paper. "We have a warrant to search the premises." I stared at him, the words not fully registering. "For what?" The officer didn't blink. "We received a report of stolen property and evidence of financial fraud." My heart stopped. "That's ridiculous." "From who?" He glanced at his partner, then back at me. "Anonymous tip." But it came with some compelling documentation. I stood back, my hands clenched at my sides. "Go ahead. You won't find anything." They swept through the house, room by room, opening drawers, flipping through files. I watched them work, my heart pounding against my ribs. Lauren had set this up. I knew it. This was her last play, her last chance to drag me down with her. They didn't find anything. Of course, they didn't. After half an hour, the lead officer stepped back onto the porch, handing me the search warrant. "Apologies for the disturbance, Mr. Warren. Looks like you're clean." I took the paper, my jaw clenched tight. "Do you mind telling me where that tip came from?" He hesitated. "Anonymous. But I can tell you it came from a private number. One that's been flagged before." I raised an eyebrow. "Flagged?" He nodded. "False reports. Stalking claims. It's got a history." I didn't need him to say the name. I knew exactly who it was. Lauren was trying to set me up. The officer tipped his hat. "You have a good night, Mr. Warren." I watched them drive away, the search warrant still clenched in my hand. Lauren was losing control. Her desperation was spilling out, wild and reckless. But that was her mistake. She was playing with fire. And I had the match. I knew it was coming. Desperation has a way of pushing people to the edge, and Lauren had been teetering on that edge for weeks. The failed custody battle, the frozen accounts, the collapse of Greenfield Holdings, it was all closing in on her. And she was running out of options. The letter came 2 days after the police left my house empty-handed. A formal notice from her lawyer, another attempt to reopen the case for emergency custody. The grounds? Emotional instability, unsafe living conditions, allegations of abuse. Lies, all of it. But I knew she was cornered. This was her last play. I wasn't going to let her take my daughter. Not now. Not ever. The hearing was set for Friday. I walked into the courthouse with Amanda by my side, her heels clicking with the confidence of someone who knew they had already won. The room was smaller than the last time, more intimate, more suffocating. Lauren was already there, sitting at the plaintiff's table, her lawyer whispering frantically in her ear. I sat down across from her, locking eyes for just a moment. She didn't look away. Neither did I. The judge entered, calling the session to order. Lauren's lawyer stood first, his voice oozing with practiced empathy. He painted a picture of chaos and instability, a father who was reckless, who couldn't provide a stable environment for his daughter. He spoke of tension, of strain, of emotional damage. I listened quietly, my hands folded in front of me. I knew what was coming. When it was Amanda's turn, she stood gracefully, straightening her papers before addressing the judge. "Your Honor, we would like to present new evidence in this case." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Amanda walked forward, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She laid out a stack of documents, one by one. "These are financial records linking Mrs. Warren to Greenfield Holdings, a shell corporation responsible for embezzling millions in illegal funds." She flipped to the next document. "Here are phone logs, proving contact between Mrs. Warren and known associates of Greenfield Holdings during her marriage." The judge's expression didn't waver. He motioned for her to continue. Amanda's smile was sharp. "Finally, we have evidence of attempted fraud in the form of falsified reports to law enforcement, calls made anonymously to try and implicate Mr. Warren in crimes he did not commit." I saw Lauren's hands grip the edge of the table, her knuckles going white. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but she didn't move. The judge scanned the documents, his brow furrowing. "Mrs. Warren, do you have a response to these allegations?" Lauren stood slowly, her hands shaking. This is all fabricated," she stammered, her voice cracking. "He's trying to ruin me." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "Your Honor, These documents were verified by third-party auditors. Mrs. Warren's signature is on every single page. The judge leaned back, his gaze steady. Mrs. Warren, this is highly irregular. I'm ordering an investigation into Greenfield Holdings and the accounts linked to your name. He paused, glancing between her and her lawyer. In the meantime, I'm granting Mr. Warren full custody of the child. Your visitation rights are suspended pending the outcome of this investigation. The words crashed into the room like a hammer. I saw Lauren's face pale, her eyes widening as the realization sank in. She was losing everything. No, she cried out, her hands slamming against the table. You can't do this. He's lying. But the judge was unmoved. He tapped his gavel sharply against the wood. Court is adjourned. Lauren stood frozen, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She turned to me, her eyes wild. You did this to me. I didn't blink. No, you did this to yourself. Her lawyer tried to pull her away, but she shook him off, her eyes locked on mine. I'm not finished. You hear me? This isn't over. I stepped forward, lowering my voice to a whisper. It is for you. The guard stepped in, escorting her out of the room, her voice fading down the hallway, sharp and shrill. I watched her go, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders, piece by piece. Amanda placed a hand on my shoulder, her voice soft. You did it. I turned to her, nodding slowly. No, we did. I walked out of that courthouse with my head held high, the sunlight cutting through the clouds as if the universe was giving me a nod of approval. Lily was waiting for me at my sister's house, her smile wide and bright as I pulled into the driveway. When I stepped inside, she ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Daddy, are you back? I hugged her tight, feeling the tears burn the corners of my eyes. I'm back, sweetheart, and I'm not going anywhere.